Here's another quick, simple two-loop mesh analysis problem. And in this particular problem they're asking us just to solve for the mesh currents. So we should be able to do this pretty quickly. So the first one we're going to look at, we'll define these two mesh currents, I1 and I2. So that's our two loops. So if we're looking at the loop associated with I1, we can come around the loop here. We see we have a 10 volt source. Again, remember when we're doing mesh or loop analysis, we're summing up the voltages. So in this one, in the direction of I1, we see we encounter the minus sign first. So therefore that'd be minus 10. Then as far as the mesh currents are involved, we see that they go through the resistor half and the 2/3 values there. So that being the case, that's going to be, we can write that as plus I1 times 1/2 plus 2/3. But then we also note that the I2 current goes through that 2/3 resistor as well, and it's working against us. So then that's going to be minus I2 times 2/3. And it looks like I left off my I1 there. All right, so that should be, oh, and then we finally have this voltage source here. And here we hit the plus sign first if we're moving around. And so that's going to be a plus 4 volts. So that'll be plus 4. And then that should be everything that contributes voltage in that loop, so it should be equal to 0. So now we want to go over to the blue I2 loop. And first thing we see is we have coming around the loop here, we see we encounter the 4 volt source. We hit the negative sign first. So then that's going to be minus 4. And then we see, as far as we're concerned, we have two resistors that I2 goes through. So then we could say I2 times 2/3 plus 2/5. But then we note that the 2/3 resistor also has the I1 current going through it. And it's going against us. So it's I2 times 2/3. And then finally, we have this voltage source here. This one's a little tricky. We hit the minus sign first, so it would be a negative. But it's going to be a double negative because it's defined as minus 4. And so that should take in all those into account. So that's all the components that are contributing anything to our voltage loop there. So again, if we sum those up, that should equal to 0. So now we should be able to combine like terms and multiply through, do some simplification. And when we do, the top equation ends up being 7/6 of I1 minus 2/3 I2, and then that's going to equal to 6. And then the second equation ends up becoming minus 2/3 I1 plus 16/15 I2. And that's going to equal to 0. And so now, again, this is just linear algebra from here. You can use several different methods to solve this. One of them being plugging this into your calculator, scientific calculator, and solve for it. When you do that, what you should come up with then is I1 is going to calculate out to 8 amps. And I2 should calculate to be 5 amps. So this is what they asked us to calculate, was the mesh currents, and that's what we come up with for those.